So, good afternoon, everybody. So we've got the afternoon slot. Let's round up anybody who's around who wants to come and join. We've got a few spare seats. Come and join us. Let me tell you a little bit about what today and this conversation is about. So, in this world of cross-border localization, every D2C brand wants to be cross-border. There's no question about that. In this new world of technology, brands and retailers need to keep up to date with the latest level of technology. So you need to be composable and you need to be able to take the best bits of everything. And if you are going to be global and you're going to have composable technology, you need to be able to keep your content continuously up to date and ready to be able to be fully optimized for whatever market you're selling to in a way that you can do it. And today we have three literal heavyweights of the industry with us today. And so maybe to start with, we'll all do a little bit of introduction. My name is Neil Kuschel. I used to be the CEO of Global E, a NASDAQ-listed cross-border localization company that helps 1,500 retailers do all of their cross-border localization in taxes, duties, payment methods, currencies, etc., etc. So it's my pleasure to be able to facilitate and host this conversation today. Let me pass over to David to introduce himself.
Yep. I'm David. I run the partnerships team and the delivery team at Shopline. Shopline is Asia's leading e-commerce platform with 500,000 brands. Yeah.
I'm Kevin Ross. I run global partnerships for Yonkers, which is the localization company. I've been in and aligned with the e-commerce game for the best part of 15 to 20 years of my life.
And I'm Jim Herbert, CEO of Patchworks. We're an iPaaS platform. We're basically technical glue for joining these platforms together and helping you guys realize your business goals.
So we're going to spend 20 minutes now talking about how you manage the content localization of a site using AI to give you a few tips and tricks to think about what you might want to do. Now let's start off with you, David. Now Shopline is a platform that I'm going to guess a few of the people in the audience may not yet have known about. You've hit the UK and European market quite hard in the last sort of 3 months, really making some waves. What is it about your platform that makes it relevant for this talk about cross-border and globalization? And in what way does it add value?
Sure, yeah, definitely right. We've only been launching, we only launched in EMEA in the 1st of April this year. But in Asia, it's massive. Like I said, they've got 500,000 customers. They're brands in beauty or fashion, cosmetics. They're sexy products that need really good storytelling, really, really good localization. And social commerce, all the really cool things that they do in Asia is so much more advanced over there than it is here. So our native feature set is really, really advanced in the SaaS world of e-commerce, right? We've had really good traction so far with brands that are north of, say, 10 million in GMV, because they're really looking for e-commerce platforms that add a more holistic view for selling, trading online. So better ways to cross-sell and upsell. And in every single part of our platform, we've delivered some form of AI to generate content, to do really, really targeted ads. So when you're trading that site, it should be super easy to show the right product to the right customer at the right time for conversion.
So I've been going to a lot of theatres this morning, and AI is bandied around a lot. And there's a lot of comments about use AI for this, use AI for that, without any real depth into how. Have you got any examples of how Shopline customers are able to take advantage of what's coming out?
Sure, I think it's another buzzword. A couple of years ago, it was headless. Now we're all talking about AI. But AI is not a new thing, you know? Like, it was first spoken about in the 50s when Alan Turing wrote a paper called "What If Computers Could Think," you know? And we're all talking about how, you know, it can generate ads and stuff like that. But AI is moving to a place where actually it's going to advise how to run your business. Did you see the Barbie film?
I did.
So when the Barbie film came out, really cool brands like Pretty Little Thing, you've got really cool merchandisers who go in and choose which products are going to be in what area of a category landing page to match the trend of Barbie. At the moment, that's all done manually by people who know the brand and know the tone of voice in order to sell the best online. AI is moving to a place where you can use platforms like Shopline to automatically create these collection pages, these brand pages, but show the message differently depending on where the customer came from, right? your TikTok customer is extremely different to your Twitter customer. And so you need a single platform that can really target these different customers.
That is probably a great segue through to Kevin here, because we talk about the ability to have different tone of voice, different content in order to be able to maximize your conversion to your customer base. But if you're going to be international, that requires multiple languages, and therefore the ability to do that is quite hard. So tell us a little bit about Yonkers and how they fit into using the generative AI in order to work with translation to make that work globally.
Yeah, so let me peel the onion back a little bit. And there's a reason why I'm sitting between these two gentlemen. If you think about the two things that you mentioned up front, Neil, on one hand, you were talking about engaging content, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that, as David has. And on the other hand, you talked about composable business. And those two key areas of investment that e-commerce companies are making are putting a lot of pressure on where localization sits in that space. And so if you talk about the space that David was talking about, which is, I remember going back 12, 15 years ago in APAC when we were talking about customer journeys, right? And you were trying to create content for each point in the customer journey so it was relevant based on where the customers was in their buying cycle. Well, we live in a world today where that customer journey is happening in near real time. And so, on social platforms, for example, e-commerce companies are creating content that needs to engage and entertain, and educate to some extent, and then also convert customers, in one go. And so that content, really, when you think about it, you need to take that content into multiple geographies, multiple languages, culturally relevant, meeting different demographics within those cultures. And so there's a lot of pressure from a localization perspective to get that piece right. And we call that the whole world of continuous publishing. And so from our perspective, we see that as continuous localization. We need to meet this demand of always on, always localizing content and being able to publish that. And then on the other side of the equation, you talked about composable business, right? And so when you think about the API first, where a localization company is going to plug into your content hubs, that's where we work with companies like Patchworks so that we can hook into the shop lines of the world, for example, to be able to grab that content and push it through the localization loop and then feed it back in this continuous loop way. And so that's what we've built with Words Online, which is our platform. We use AI, and not just in the machine translation space, but across the journey to actually make that as efficient as possible and be as composable as possible so we can hook into the different platforms.
A lot of people on translation are always nervous about the balance between computer and human and the cost implications of that. Everybody goes, if I could have 100% human, I would, but I can't afford it and it's too slow. 100% computer is never right. What's your view and advice for brands thinking about that?
That's interesting. I think that's an evolving and emerging challenge, and it's a challenge that we are literally trying to meet. And so the way that we work is that we bring the human machine together, and we do that in some very unique ways, which I won't go into here, but if you want to find out, let me know. But we literally are using AI to take the initial pieces of the content, do the localization, and then we've got some patented technology that helps us fit human in that loop in ways in which we can make sure that the content that needs to get human eyeballs gets human eyeballs so that we get optimal content, optimal quality of that content back out into the CMS or the PIM or the infrastructure.
Right. Now I'm going to ask you a difficult question, so get ready for this. And it's probably what the audience are thinking. When you think of continuous publishing, I think expensive, right? Always changing, must be expensive. Now, obviously there's a conversion uplift, but how do you counter that part in terms of where do you get the payoff between how much it costs versus how much it gets you back in?
Yeah, I think it's horses for courses, right? So there are areas where content needs to be continually engaging, and then there are some pieces of content that doesn't necessarily change. It might be seasonal. So if you think about your product content, for example. So it is horses for courses. But I think that one area where AI, so we do, the Adobe Creative Suite. We do all of the localization of the Creative Suite, the software, the Creative Suite into multiple languages. And they are using AI, generative AI, to help to solve the problem of quickly getting content to market. So that's one area where AI is being used to try and solve that problem of continuous publishing, continuous localization. It's actually a great UK use case for AI. In our space, we're using AI to help to manage the process. Not everything that comes to us needs to have human eyes, or not everything needs to be machine translated. It's different content for different courses. And so the way in which we pull that together is important in trying to meet this whole idea of continuous publishing. We call that continuous localization. And so we are able to take, if you send me a piece of work to be localized, I can drip feed that work back to you, as languages of every single product in every single language. As we solve one product in one language, we can push it back to the CMS or the PIM, put it back, for example, into Shopline. And so you don't have to wait until all of that content is translated into all the languages. We can do it in a continuous loop, and that's what companies are starting to do and expect from localization.
Okay, excellent. So then that leads me on to Jim, a stalwart of the e-commerce industry over the last 20 years. So Jim, after a phenomenal career at BigCommerce, you've joined Patchworks as the CEO. How does Patchworks fit into this story of cross-border localization?
Thank you for that introduction again, Neil. I did drive the international expansion of BigCommerce and my own expansion at the same time. Coming back to your heavyweight comment earlier, that was very nice. We're very much the sort of the plumbing really in the Patchwork side. No one's going to come out and buy Patchworks unless you have a need. And the need is you're replatforming. You've chosen Shopline maybe as a new platform. We've got one launching on Tuesday next week, haven't we, David? Fingers crossed, it's all looking good. Or it might be that you need to integrate that tech from Yonkers and other people within our platform to make a real difference to your business. And coming back, just building on what you were saying, I've done a lot of these webinars and conversations this year. I was talking to one of the world's largest sneaker, to be American, there go, localization straight away, manufacturers earlier this year. They're generating 4 million content items a quarter. And they couldn't do that without the use of generative AI now, and the ability to even use other AI models to check out what's being created for them. And the reason they're doing it is they're now obviously working in 86 countries. So that 4 million, when you divide it by 86, suddenly it all becomes believable. If you think looking at their product catalog, and that's the continuous publishing that we're talking about.
And so, a retailing brand who decides to use Patchworks gets the advantage of what?
Two advantages really, quicker speed to market and a cheaper speed to market for integrations. So we launched the newest version of the Patchwork services earlier this year. We had a closed beta for a couple of months. I think we launched at the beginning of June. 2 days later, a client went live on Shopline, did all the work themselves. So in the past, integration's been quite hard. I'm a techie nerd. I'm wearing my tech CEO hoodie, trying to really pretend that I'm still doing that stuff. And I used to do a lot of integrations. I used to run an agency back in the day doing Hybris implementations, if everyone remembers that. To do an integration to, say, Microsoft Dynamics was probably 100 grand, and it probably took 15 weeks. And I used to sell those at cost, because actually the real benefit of using an agency is the front end, the conversion rate, driving more traffic into your website, making sure that the average order value is up using personalization and the AI technology even back then. That's what you really want to spend the money on. You don't want to spend the money on the integration. Again, those kind of integrations with Patchworks, what you're going to get with that is a low monthly fee. How low? Register a lead and find out. Come and talk to me. And also you'll get that speed to market. So, this Mirror Maison that we were talking about, David, they went live 2 days after they started doing the integration work, Shopline through to a WMS called Lionwheel, right? That I don't think anybody here has probably heard of, but it's doing a great job for them.
And I think that's probably my biggest observable thing from having been 5 years at Globally and now doing non-exec at a bunch of other sort of tech companies, that there's a change from retailers to needing constantly changing composable technology. I'm the cross-border advisor for IMRG as well, who helped organise this event. And that gives me the opportunity to speak to a lot of UK brands. And as I speak to them, one of the biggest challenges that heads of e-com have is that there's too much technology out there at the moment. It used to be, as a retailer, you would build your tech platform and you'd go off and sell. And it's not that anymore, because there's probably 8 different areas where you need to plug in a new piece of tech. And and these days it's about being able to fail fast and be able to put the right thing in and take the right thing out. And that's creating a huge change in the environment for both tech companies, retailers, and also agencies. If we have any like Shopify, BigCommerce, Shopline agencies out here, the agencies need to be the ones who are able to help a retailer by going, here are the good bits of technology, here are the right platforms that you should use. You should be independent, you should be able to switch and change and do all these various different things. And that's what I'm going to lead on to now with my next question for the three of you. I'm going to imagine there's a combination out of the audience here of tech people from one of the presenters. There'll be agencies from people who are working with brands. There'll also be some brands and retail companies out here themselves. Particularly focused on the benefit to the brands and the retailers when we bring it back into cross-border AI and what they should do. Can you think about, I'm going to come to you first, David, but can you give them one piece of advice, something to actually take away? Because having been to a few of these things, there's quite a lot of generic conversations and people talk about platitudes and very nice things at a very skim level. But if you're going to walk away from here and do one thing, what is that one thing?
I want to make a quick point about continuous publishing before I do that. So I think that's a really, really important thing, because if you work for a brand, like, you become quite an advocate for the brand, right? I used to work for Hackett. One day I went in with a Ted Baker suit on. It was massively frowned upon, okay? So you become advocates for the brand. So what you need to be able to do is provide that same level of advocacy on the website when you're building those storefront experiences. That's why you need really good continuous publishing, because if I'm always talking about the new collection I've got, those things basically, you're constantly changing your story and you're talking about why Hackett's better than so-and-so. My one piece of advice around that is just to actually listen and understand the customer properly. Everyone talks about that and how you segment and how you do that type of stuff using AI. But sometimes just step out and don't choose a piece of tech, but choose a platform that can help you meet business objectives, not just buy a new fancy front end. That's my tip.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I'm going to feed on from that. You talked about advocacy, and one of the things that we are very aware of when we work with brands is you're creating content in your first language or native language, wherever that is in the world, but you're talking to customers and you're trying to advocate into those customer segments in their own language, in their own culture. And so as a localization company, we're massively aware of how to do that, right? Which then leads on to what's the one thing. And for me, I think if there's one takeaway, it would be focus on your terminology. Because every brand has a voice, every brand has a way of saying things. And as a localization company, we spend a lot of time with brands working on what does your voice need to look like. And we spend a lot of time grabbing that and saving that into a terminology database so that when we localize, our AI looks at that and says, no, that's the sound of the voice that brand has. That's the tone that we need to use when we localize. That makes a big difference to the way that we localize, our linguists, and the way that we take that through our process. So terminology is king.
Jim?
Just one thing? I mean, it's...
Well, you can have two if you like.
How long have we got? Oh, there we go. 3 minutes.
Yeah, we have a bit of time. Okay.
No, it's my one takeaway. I've been doing e-commerce now for 24 years. Is the fact that e-commerce retail is a science. For the first time ever, right? I worked in shops and bars growing up, and you'd have guys coming in saying, I can help you with your footfall, I can tell you where to place things by the till. And they could, and you get broad numbers out of it, but it was hard and you didn't see instant results and you didn't really know what your ad spend was driving. With e-commerce, with analytics and what you've got in the box with Shopline, and with the ability to use tools like Yonkers to localize your content or come up with new content for particular marketplaces, you've got the ability to see instantly or one day later the results of doing that. And the metrics are the same, right? So number of visitors you get to your site, it's the average order value that you're selling ultimately, and then it's the conversion rate. Those three things together are going to drive your sales. So look at it and then pick on the bits of your business that are working well and double down on it, right? And then maybe if you're finding that a particularly high margin product isn't selling in a particular marketplace, analyze it, try and work out why. Maybe you should drop that product line, but if it's high margin, there's probably something else you could be doing to get it in front of a different audience in a different way, in a more personalized way, which is going to get that conversion rate up and then actually really drive your profit.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to give you my takeaway, which is completely independent because I don't really work for anyone anymore. But
Show off.
yeah, my view is that you can't stand still anymore. Whether you're a retailer, whether you're a tech company, whether you're an agency, relying on what you've always done before is not going to work because there are so many new growth bits of stuff coming out that you've got to stay on top of it. The problem is it's so hard to stay on top of it. So I would say go to independent people that can give you some proper advice. I'd like to think that agencies should be that person, but often agencies are biased towards their own things they've done before and in the past and have that kind of, that go to their easy place, if you see what I mean. But there are people like the IMRG, which are free to join if you're a retailer. So you can go and get independent peer advice from other retailers, and that's been fantastic, so that one brand can speak to another brand and go, I'm struggling with reviews. Who do you think? And you can have a debate about it. There are our friends at the DBT, the Department of Business and Trade, in the corner there, who will give you independent advice on anything about what kinds of things work as well. And if you're a tech company, here's my one piece of advice. This book a demo thing, I hate that. And retailers and brands hate that too. I speak to heads of e-commerce and they go, the last thing I want to do is book a demo. So I give 45 minutes of my time to speak to some 15-year-old salesperson who doesn't understand what they're talking about, who's going to kill me with PowerPoint slides, right? So I don't actually know what the answer is, but if you're a tech company, think a little bit differently from that, because I think you're losing a lot of sales. And that would be my point. Oh, I've been told off. Right, so at that point, that probably brings us to an end. If anybody has any questions, we might be able to, the nice gentleman says we could squeeze one or two in if anybody wants one. Anybody got anything to say, or are you ready to go for some beers? In which case, I will say thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. We'll be around if anybody wants to have private questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everyone.